So hello everyone, welcome to Gameweek 7 of the Premium Player FPL podcast at premium_FPL. If you're still with us, well done, because we're both trudging along in the mid 500, 600,000. I don't know about you, Mindy, but it feels like a bit of a slog to this season. I thought last week we both had a strong team out and it didn't kind of materialise that way. So been a tricky start to the season, but we've got some exciting news to share on the podcast, which we'll reveal later, which makes this game week quite exciting. But anything else you want to add, Mindy, ahead of what should be a good game week?
Yeah, it was my worst game week of the season. But what happened was someone logged into my team over the weekend and had to change. So it wasn't actually my team that had a shocker.
I wondered why Civicas was still in there.
But on a serious note, we are going to talk about the issue of teams being deleted and hacked and stuff. It happened to a couple of high-profile people last season, but it just seems like loads of people it's happening to now. Just randomly, people are being targeted. It doesn't seem like, well, I say targeted. It doesn't really seem like there's a pattern. We've got a slide up now for the podcast listeners. It's just Fantasy Premier League's tweets. They've
hot off the press. They sent this out 10 minutes ago. Yeah.
So it's good that they've actually said something, but in a way, they've not really been very helpful. It's kind of just saying it's not really much to do with us. The thing they have suggested is third-party sites, maybe sites that you use to check price rises, where you put in your Fantasy Premier League password or something. Maybe they're not secure. So I'd probably recommend if it's not worth the risk really for your team being deleted, maybe use alternatives where you don't need to put in your password and things like that, and change your password, make it a password you only use for FPL. Don't have it the same as other passwords elsewhere. It's really annoying that it sounds like for the people who've had their teams deleted, they've not said anything about what they're going to do.
No, the world number ones, that is deleted as well. I saw that this morning, so that's soul crushing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a shocker. But before we, in terms of other admin, before we forget, so we're live. So any questions? Get them in the YouTube comments. Podcast listeners, you can ask us questions on DMs or whatever, and we can add it into running order for next week, or we'll reply if it's a question for this game week. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all of the platforms, and we've got our prize league. So not actually had that much interest as I thought. I thought people would be interested in free money, but cash, £50 cash prize. So if you're interested, send us a DM and we'll let you know how to enter. It's a Saturday deadline again this week, isn't it?
Yeah, 12:30, which is quite telling because it's the Chelsea fixture up first, and a lot of people are going to be transferring Chelsea boys, so it could be a great start or a tricky start to the weekend.
Yeah, especially after we both captained Ronaldo, didn't we, in the 12:30 last week? So the curse of the early kick of the first game week, the first fixture of the game week captain came to fruition. I don't really believe in that, obviously, but it is annoying when you know you're off to a bad start straight away. But segue into the game week scores. Go into
do you want to touch on run through
so this is what we're looking at today. Annoyingly, a lot of highly owned defenders are injured or doubtful. Trent, Shaw, Reece James. So we'll touch on that, look at what to do, and interesting North London derby at the weekend, the way that panned out. So Arsenal back on the agenda, a lot of cheap assets there to consider, and then obviously Chelsea, their fixture swing that we've been talking about since the start of the season is finally here. And we'll touch on Spurs and West Ham briefly, but it's going to be more Arsenal-Chelsea there, I think. And then lots of people are wildcarding this week, including myself. So my team could not go on any longer with the likes of Gilmore first on the bench, Simicas, etc. I probably should have wildcarded earlier, maybe, but yeah, it was always the one. This game week is what I had in mind from the start of the season for the Chelsea run. So yeah, I'll go through my latest draft, and then the much loved Snog Mario Void. It's me on the buy hold sell duties this week. So, and then it's premium planning, looking at captains and the fixtures, etc., for the next few weeks, seeing what the plans are. And it's the international break next week, so some important stuff to discuss there. It caused a bit of havoc last time, didn't it, with the Brazilian players and.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get that this time because they've been given special exemption. So there should be less drama around this time, but you never know, do you?
Yeah. Cool. Let's get into the game. So I think you got more points.
Yeah, I think it's for the first time this season because we drew last year. Although not too much to shout home about with 44 points, closing the gap of Mindy to I think 9 points now. But that wild card might be quite telling. So I'll just run through a team: Sanchez with 2, Trent with 1, Shaw 0. I was going to say thanks to Shaw for getting booked just before getting subbed off with an injury. So that was ultimate humiliation there if you got Shaw on your FPL team. Marcel with 6, probably quite fortunate to play. I think Ait Nouri picked up an injury in the Carling Cup. So yes, kept his position, got a clean sheet. Duffy with 2, Sarr 9, took out Rafinha for Sarr just because of the uncertainty around Rafinha, but he ended up outscoring him anyway. I think Rafinha got 10 points. So bit unlucky with that transfer, but at least he did return, and it was from a corner, which I didn't think Sal had it in him, so that was quite good. Salah with 7, Benrahma with 3, Ronaldo, we've talked about captaincy, wasn't the right choice this week with 4 with captain, Lukaku, and Antonio strikes again. He looked formidable again in the highlights that I saw, so he's pretty much undroppable now if you're playing your wild card or not, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I agree. So how's your
I had a small drop to around 600,000 from 550. So still not terrible, still inside the top 1 million. But I think the next couple of weeks with Ronaldo and Lukaku both having good fixtures, because I think Ronaldo has Everton and Leicester, and having them both, not many teams are going to have them both. I kind of need them both to deliver over the next 2, I think, to rise up the ranks. But hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll happen.
Cool. Yeah. So on to I'll quickly touch on that actually. So I think the points, it's really bunched up still at the moment. Like there's like 10 points separating like hundreds of thousands of places and things at the moment. So as quickly as you can fall at the moment, you can rise that quickly as well. The way, because teams have been so similar so far. I think it's the ranks, they're not so important still, I don't think. It's more just about having a team you're happy with and having a plan, I think, still at this. Don't lose your head because you're not where you want to be. Although it's easier said than done. Yeah, onto my team. Absolute shocker. You talked about how bad it was having Shaw. Well, I had Shaw, Fernandes and Ronaldo. So that game almost couldn't have gone any worse. And being a United fan as well, it was a painful 2 or 3 hours. I think
Ronaldo on pens now. Would you say?
I think from all these comments, I think it might be Bruno's decision still, because he saw. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said something like, he's got an excellent record. We trust him. I'm sure he's going to go again. He didn't really say exactly like who's going to take it. He said we're lucky to have 2, but he did mention that Bruno's still obviously a penalty. So I don't know. I think it might be Bruno's call.
It was a real sideshow, wasn't it? You had the Bruno Ronaldo factor, then you also had Martinez. I watched the clip so many times on Twitter. As a non-United fan, it was hilarious. Obviously, as a United fan, it wasn't. But I just think the whole drama of the whole situation was just bizarre. Something you've not seen before in a football game. Yeah,
he's trying to be like the Sergio Ramos of the goalkeeper position, isn't he? He's trying to be a shithouse from between the posts. Because he did it in the Copa America as well, didn't he? Absolutely wound up. Was it Yerry Mina? He said to Yerry Mina before he took his penalty, "I'm going to eat you," and then Yerry Mina missed his penalty. So I mean, yeah, fair play to him. It's been successful so far. Successful shithousery. And then, so there, just to run through the rest of my team, not that I really want to. Alexander-Arnold, who everyone has, we'll talk about him later. Veltman was
got you out of trouble, Veltman?
A little ray of sunshine, yeah. That last minute assist, what was going on there? Thankful to the Crystal Palace defence for just completely switching
some
off.
of the worst defending you'll ever see. Yeah.
And they played so well in that game at that point. And then in midfield, Damari Gray got an assist, which was all right. Ben Rama, he played quite well, but didn't get any points. Salah, who I've not seen the highlights of that game, but what I've heard is he got his 100th Premier League goal, which is something you mentioned last week, and then he had a couple more chances after that, but he just didn't take them. Maybe he sort of was so relieved or elated at getting that milestone. He wasn't as, I don't know. I think I heard late Riser mention that on the FPL wire that maybe the emotion of that distracted him or something. But yeah, well done to people who went Salah over Ronaldo. I think a lot of people did go Salah this week because in that fixture they decided to take on the Brentford rather than United's fixture at Villa. And I think we were talking last week about Ronaldo and is he fixture proof, etc. I don't know if you've started to change your mind, but the way Liverpool, Chelsea, and City attack, it's just so much more. Like I just don't. With the Ronaldo, it's like you're also backing. You're not just backing Ronaldo. You've got to back United creating chances for him and doing that in an efficient, consistent way. And I don't think that's quite happened. Doesn't look to be quite there yet. So.
It's easy to change your opinion, isn't it? After one game, obviously the team didn't look.
Well, that was my opinion. That was my opinion from 2 or 3 weeks ago.
It was. To be fair to you, I think the next two, I'm going to hold Everton, Leicester, and if he doesn't pull it off, then yeah, probably look to sell, bank a transfer, and use 2 transfers to get rid of him.
Yeah. So on my wild card, there's a few of these players going to be going, but yeah, Antonio, as you said, he's definitely not going. So my rank is now. So yeah, my total was 38 points, which is absolutely awful, and my rank is now 448k. So that's a drop from 264. It's quite a big red arrow there. But yeah, hopefully the wild card sorts that out.
Yeah, well, I'm 9 points behind, so it's about 5 points between each 100k, isn't it? Which is nothing at this stage. We'll move on to probably the biggest talking point this week, I'd say, other than the Ronaldo-Lukaku factor, is probably the premium defence, especially with the news that Trent is suffering from an injury, obviously didn't play in the Champions League last night, probably won't play against City, but then the international break will help him, likely to be back for Watford, but if he misses that game, they've got United next. So there's question marks as to what to do with Trent if you're on a wild card or if you want to get a Chelsea defender in. And then there's obviously Luke Shaw, who might play this evening against Villarreal. Obviously not confirmed yet. Ollie said he was touch and go. So if he plays that game, then you've got to assume he's fit for the weekend, providing he doesn't come off. But if he doesn't play the game tonight, there's obviously going to be question marks. And then Reece James, who picked up an ankle injury against City, and he's out long term, I think. Was it 6 weeks that was first quoted? I don't know if that's still the case, but I think if you've got James, it's easier decision. You switch to another Chelsea defender. The decision is if you've got Shaw or Trent, that's where the decision comes in. What's your first thoughts on the defence, premium defence crisis, would you call it, or just more a transition towards Chelsea and City defence?
It is there'll be a lot of people who have Trent and Shaw, won't there? So
imagine you got all three and you played your wild card a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Well, that is a crisis, yeah. My first thought is if you can afford to hold Trent and keep putting a good team out, I'd just do that because he doesn't sound like it's a major thing. And with the international break coming, there's 2 weeks there for recovery. So in terms of actual game weeks, FPL game weeks, he might not miss that many games. So yeah, if you've already played your wildcard and you've got him, and you've got other stuff you could do with the team, I'd maybe hold him. But yeah, it depends on what we hear later in the week, how long he's going to be out for. Sure, I think even if he is fit, I'd maybe be looked to moving on now because like Maguire's injured. I'm not really sure how long that's for yet, but if Maguire's out for a while, the appeal of the United defence just isn't there anyway. And with Maguire there and like, having to make a new partnership between Lindelof and Varane, I just wouldn't fancy it. And United's fixtures, good fixtures, are mostly gone. So my first thought would be if you have Shaw and Trent as your two problems in defence, I'd maybe just look at getting rid of Shaw first. Would you agree?
See, I've took Shaw out because obviously his injury news came first, and Rudiger was going up in price, and Shaw was predicted to go down. He's not gone down just yet, I think, but I think tonight he will go down. So I actually made that decision early on just to get 0.2 of a swing. But in hindsight, I just think them two fixtures for United obviously have not played too well, and defence hasn't looked great. But I think Everton and Leicester are still pretty good fixtures. So I'm kind of, with Trent's injury, like you say, it probably depends on how long he's out for, but I'm quite amenable to selling either, to be honest. Even though I've made the Shaw transfer, I don't think it's as clear cut as what you think. Just because obviously Trent would have City this weekend, and then Watford off the back of the international break, and then followed by United. So it's just a question of Shaw getting more points over Trent over the next 2 or 3, which I could kind of see happening. So I think it all depends on what other fires you've got to put out. If you can easily bring Trent back in a few weeks, then it's a lot easier, isn't it? But if you want to make your transfers more concise than that, then maybe Shaw is the way to go.
Well, yeah, because the thing with the other thing there is that you're definitely going to want Trent back when he's fit, aren't you? Whereas Shaw, when United have their full defence back and Shaw's back fully fit without any problems, and Maguire's back, you might not actually want United back. So I think Shaw, getting rid of Shaw is more of a longer term thing, which is why for most people I think that might be the better one to do. So yeah, and then Reece James obviously you've got to get rid of.
Yeah, I think I've just been burnt too much this season that I'm second thinking every decision I make. But yeah, I've done Shaw to Rudiger early. I do think Chelsea defence and City after Liverpool game is the way to go. We've brought up here, this is a chart that you sent over. If you want to talk about it, obviously it's around XGI, isn't it?
So yeah, this shows the expected goal involvement rankings for the defenders, taken from the Fantasy Football Scout stream on YouTube. So it's interesting to see Richie there, isn't it?
Yeah,
but second, I think because he takes a lot of the set pieces.
I'm not sure I'll be going in for any Newcastle defender anytime soon.
No, definitely not. So yeah, Alexander-Arnold head and shoulders above, partly because he's taken 21 corners so far. That kind of highlights like why I was saying, if he's not going to miss that many FPL game weeks and you can afford to just keep him on the bench, maybe that's worth it if you've got Shaw to look at as well. And then Alonso in third. We're going to talk about him in detail a bit more later on. We've put quite a bit of time into Alonso, but neither of us have got him yet. I might be taking the plunge this week. Might fit into my Trent plan, sort of, because you could, if you're on Wildcard this week, you could get Alonso and then keep a bit of money in the bank and then just have him as for 2 or 3 weeks to punt and then go back to Trent. So that's something I'm considering. It
links back to what we were talking about last week, wasn't it? I think Cancelo is the standout City option. Defense, I know Diaz is more nailed, but I think if you've got Cancelo, who's already a bit of a rotation risk, but not as much with Mendy out and Zinchenko out injured, I think that makes you want to go safe with Rudiger. I think if you go Alonso, you do go the Diaz option, but that's just personal preference. I think you can have one, but not both. Well, you might do differently with your wildcard, but I just think it'd be a nightmare if they're both not playing, isn't it?
I think it depends on who you've got on your bench as well, because in this run coming up, if you've got Livramento, who seems to have a decent fixture every week, you could afford for one of them to not play, because then Livramento comes in, who's got a good fixture. So I think that's part of my thinking as well, in terms of having two positions on my bench that are strong enough to cover, because you've got Livramento, you've got the cheap Arsenal options. There are players you can have that could come in. It's just the risk there is you're hoping that these players don't get subbed on, but with defenders, they are less likely to get subbed on for the 1-pointer generally.
No, fair
and then it just shows though on this list that Cancelo is the best one for upside in the City defense. And then I think on the next one, it sort of highlights it even more, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So this
go on.
This is expected points, this graph. So this, I think expected points, if I've understood it right, it combines XG and XA and puts them together. So, and I think I also factor in like clean sheet, like
big chances conceded as well. Yeah.
So Cancelo is up top here by quite not a lot, but quite a little bit. So Cancelo and Diaz top. So it's interesting to see how clear the City defenders are in terms of options. I think last week we showed how Chelsea's XGC stats actually aren't that good, and we were talking about how they relied on Mindy to be making a few good saves, whereas City just aren't conceding that many shots or chances whatsoever. So that's why Cancelo and Diaz are so high up. So a lot of the talk this week's been, which two Chelsea defenders are you going for? But there's an argument for having two City defenders and one Chelsea rather than the other way around. The problem there is that the two best City options are more expensive. It's harder to afford. But if you can make it work, I think that's a viable strategy.
I think it probably depends on the game this weekend, doesn't it? So if City do keep a clean sheet against Liverpool, I think those get wildcarded in game week 8. The topic soon shifts, doesn't it, to two City defenders and one's Chelsea. So I think a lot will depend on the game this weekend.
Yeah, and then so just going through the rest of this list. So Cancelo, Diaz, Walker, the three. I didn't realize Walker was there as well. So yeah, the three top ones there are the City boys. I'm not sure how Michael Keane's got there. But then Trent next, and then Alonso and Laporte. So back to Chelsea and City options. So it does seem like the
Duffy next is Duffy's interesting, quite high up there, isn't it? That's interesting.
Well, yeah, with Duffy though, I don't know if you saw the week on Monday. Dan Burn was back, and I just wonder now how secure Duffy will remain. Like if I was on Wildcard, I wouldn't be picking Duffy now, especially if you're getting him at 4.3. If you got him at 4.0,
I think it's one of them, isn't it? If you've got him, keep him, but don't bring him in. Which is what the classic FPL saying, isn't it?
Because I can just see, especially when Tariq Lamptey comes back, because Veltman can play centre back as well. So Tariq Lamptey's back on the bench now for Brighton, so I can see him coming back to right wing back, given his performances before he got injured last season. So yeah, there could be some weird decisions there. Graham Potter did do some strange rotation last season, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I wouldn't get Duffy now. And then the rest of the list, I'm not sure there's anyone really would be interested in targeting for transfers or on wildcard in the rest of the list. Is there anyone else in there that stands out to
you? Not really. Obviously, the two Brentford lads, but they've got a few tricky fixtures now, haven't they, before game week 9, when their fixtures start to turn again. I think the question probably is it 4 defenders that you go for now if you're playing your wild card? City, Chelsea, or City 2, Chelsea, and then Trent when he's back fit? I think that's going to be the question, isn't it? Because everyone seems to think that the defence is the place to go now. And I think, was it last season, everyone started off with 5 at the back and it soon quickly changed. So I think it's just going to be interesting to see how that develops. I do think if I was playing a wild card now, like yourself, I probably would be tempted by either 2 Chelsea and 2 City. And then obviously the other one, and then Trent. And then back it with a Livramento.
Yeah, no, I agree. And a player who's not on this list, or the one before that is worth consideration, is Christensen, because he's so cheap at Chelsea.
No Reece James now as well.
I think he's still 5 million. So it's an interesting debate, because if you've not had Rudiger already and he's 5.7, there's not that much difference in terms of what you... if they both start, I think Christensen, from what I've seen, he's his baseline bonus is actually higher, so you might end up with more bonus points from Christensen than you do from Rudiger. But obviously, the pro with Rudiger, the pro with Rudiger is the security of the start. So I think the way I heard Zoffer explain it on FPL Wire was that Rudiger's probably going to get 7 out of every 8 games, whereas Christensen will get 6 out of every 8. So
yeah, I suppose set piece threat as well with Rudiger. You do get that, don't you? He's already scored. Is it against Tottenham? He scored, so I think you do get an added goal threat as well.
So yeah, it's just if you're trying to fit in Trent and Cancelo and or if you've got Alonso, you might just I wouldn't be against people picking Christensen, especially while Reece James is out. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else to mention. Not off the top of my head, but
I think people will be swayed now, won't they, by the premiums, and then you will be backing up with a Livramento or a Duffy if you think the rotation isn't a factor. But yeah, I think 4 is the way to go now.
I forgot. There's also the Arsenal options, but we'll cover them next.
Yeah,
when we get onto the London.
So yeah, we thought we talk a lot about the 2 Manchester clubs, don't we, on the pod? But we thought after such a big game at the weekend, obviously North London derby, which was a crushing defeat for Spurs, actually lucky to get a goal. So if those were the Arsenal defenders, were quite unfortunate not to get a clean sheet. Those who got White or Tierney already. But yeah, obviously contrasting fortunes. You got Chelsea hitting the strong fixtures now. Arsenal got great set of fixtures in great form now. Won the last 3, is it? So yeah, look like they're back to the best. Looks like Arteta's finally got his rhythm going with the players. I think we got core of the spine back now. That a few crushing defeats at the start, they were missing a lot of players due to COVID and injuries. So he's finally got his team together. Ramsdale looks great in net for them. He looks like a real leader. He looks like he's kind of not born to play for that club, but he looks like a different keeper from the one I saw at Bournemouth or Sheffield United. He seems to really, like, the fans were cheering his name at one point against Spurs, which for his keeper who's only played 2 or 3 games would be great for him. He'll take a lot of confidence from that. And then obviously Spurs, the only team I think to start off top of the league and be overtook by bottom of the league within 3 games. I saw a stat earlier, which is obviously shows you how bad they've kind of turned over the last couple of weeks. And then West Ham, who just seem to keep marching on. Another good win against Leeds, who were a bit injury hit, but they had to come back to win that one. And obviously Antonio's goal was great. He took that perfect, just the power and pace and skill to finish it off. That's been the story of his season so far, and it'll be interesting to see if that continues.
Yeah, so in terms of actually looking at players, should we start with Arsenal, seeing as we were just talking about defenders before?
Yeah.
I think Ramsdale, Tierney, Ben White, they're all solid options, I think, now with Arsenal's fixtures. And there is a bit of a doubt with Ramsdale because Arteta's not really been clear when asked, like, is he the number 1 now? So that's the risk you have to factor in.
I think it would take a few poor games now. I think he's paid that position his own. My personal, I could be wrong, but I just thought that North London derby, he looked right at home, didn't he? He made a few great saves. I'd be very surprised if Leno gets his place back any time, but I could be wrong. I think because the premium defense now, Chelsea and City and Trent when he comes back, I think Ramsdale's a nice way to get into that Arsenal back line for the fixtures. Personally,
yeah, I'm inclined to agree. It's just that risk is annoying.
Yeah, I do get what you're saying. Yeah.
It's the transfer you hate to have to make, a goalkeeper transfer, just in case. Something I might look at is having 2 4.5s, just in case, just so I don't have to worry about it. So if Leno does come in for a game, at least there's another keeper there ready.
I suppose you've got Foster now as well, isn't it? 4 mil. So obviously 2 rotation threats to both lose the place, but he could come in and do a job at 4 mil. He played really well at the weekend as well.
Foster's only coming in for a bit though, isn't he? It's just because Backman's injured. It's not like he's not on performance that he's taken.
I'm sure Batman was back at the weekend.
Oh right.
Okay,
I'll
double check that now. If you want to go through someone else, I'll double check.
Okay,
I think that's right.
So yeah, while we're talking about Arsenal, the other players at Arsenal that have emerged as real options now are the midfielders. So the 3 budget ones are all around similar enough prices: Saka, Odegaard, and Smith Rowe, they look to be getting decent minutes. I think you'd say Odegaard and Saka are a bit more nailed than Emil Smith Rowe, but Emil Smith Rowe is the cheapest one at 5.3. I guess with Saka, you've got pedigree from last season. You know he can do it in the league on a consistent basis. So I think you do get what you pay for by paying the premium for Saka. But Emil Smith Rowe looked great at the weekend. He talked about in his post-match interview that he wants to work more on being in the box to finish off, get those kind of chances like he scored at the weekend. So I do wonder if he'll have a bit of maybe like an Aaron Ramsey season, just trying to get into the box as much as possible and add a bit more productivity to his game. Because as good as he looked last season when he was playing, he didn't really have much FPL output, did he? He just sort of looked neat and tidy. So yeah, there's three great options there.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're right, but I don't know sure read the quotes about Batman, but I think he was injured for the game. But I think the manager was saying that Foster will play the next couple. So yeah, it'd be interesting to keep an eye on it. For some reason, I thought he was back, but obviously not.
Yeah, it's one to keep an eye on that because I think for a lot of wildcarders, Foster and Ramsdale would be a popular combination. But in 4 or 5 weeks, you could end up with neither of them playing potentially. So it's something to think about. So, what are your thoughts on the Arsenal midfielders? Would you go for any of them?
Yeah, personally, I would if I was playing wildcard. Obviously, Saka is the standout. I think Odegaard looks good when he's playing, good on the eye, but I'm not sure he's an FPL player. I think I'll probably edge towards like your Saka's or your Smith Rowe just because of his value as well at 5.3, which for a team that's playing well, it suddenly looks like a snip, doesn't it? I'd be even tempted to have him as like a fifth mid if you're playing a 3-5, if you're playing a 3-4-3, for example, just because as you talk about as the season, there seems to be a lot of injuries this season, particularly already. So if you have Smith Rowe as kind of a ready-made replacement coming in, I wouldn't be against that. I know I like to keep money on the pitch with the 11, but I just think it's only 0.8, isn't it, difference from the cheapest midfielder, or 0.9 if it's a 4.4. So yeah, Saka probably would be my preference, but I could see Smith Rowe, probably one of them two if I was to wildcard.
So yeah, I just found some stats here on Saka versus Smith Rowe over the last 3 game weeks. So Saka's had 9 goal attempts, whereas Smith Rowe's had 4. Saka's had 8 shots in the box. Smith Rowe's had 4. Saka's had 7 chances created. Smith Rowe's had 4. 4 for everything so far. Big chances created. Saka's had 2. Smith Rowe's not created any big chances. Penalty area touches. Saka 19. Smith Rowe 7. And baseline bonus 44 for Saka. Smith Rowe 18. So Saka is better than Smith Rowe on all those key stats, but you've got to factor in the price difference.
I think I'd be hesitant if I was playing Smith Rowe every week. I probably would be hesitant. I think I'd more if I wanted like an extra sub, I'd probably bring Smith Rowe in that way. I just think with Pepe, he's probably more at risk, isn't he? Smith Rowe is coming out rather than Saka. I think Saka will play as many minutes as what he's fit.
And yeah, Saka showed last season, didn't he? He's so versatile. He can play different positions, which helps keep him in the first team, doesn't it? Most weeks. And Aubameyang, would you with the strikers, with the amount of strikers we've got to consider, it's just hard to justify him at his price, isn't it? But he might yet.
It's him and Vardy, isn't it? Him and Vardy, no one's gonna touch, even despite how many they score.
Just awkwardly priced compared to some of the other options, I think. But for people who've had Vardy recently, they've done well. So shall we touch briefly on Spurs and West Ham? What are you thinking of them? I think we've both got double West Ham. Are you keeping both? The
fixtures take a bit of a Antonio. Yeah, the fixtures are taking a bit of a turn now. Not as bad as what you'd think. With Spurs at home now, it doesn't look as tricky as years gone by, and games like that. It's not an impossible stretch of fixtures, but obviously when you add into Europe, it might get a bit tricky in managing that squad. I think the game I watched last weekend, I thought personally was Benrahma's best game, but obviously it was against Leeds and injury ravaged. He hit the post and keeper pulled off. Millier pulled off a couple of great saves from Benrahma. So and he had an assist to Antonio that was saved as well. So I actually thought it was his best game, but Leeds got the worst defense, so you can't make a conclusion just from that. So I still think Benrahma's playing well. I thought he would have died down a bit by now, but I still think he's playing really good football. And obviously Antonio, I just think if you're playing your wild card with these different options emerging with Saka and stuff, with just a better set of fixtures, I probably would be looking to move on Benrahma personally. But I think if you're not wildcard, I think it's fine to keep Brentford next game, and then like I said, Spurs is coming up. I'm not sure if that's next, but yeah, I think if you're playing your wildcard, probably Antonio and no one else, just because of the Europe and fixtures like that. Obviously, they've got the Carabao Cup now as well, haven't they? So it'd be interesting to see how Moyes kind of rotates his squad around that.
No, yeah, I think I broadly agree with those points. And then Tottenham, we can cover off quite quickly, I think. I don't think anyone's considering anyone for Tottenham.
Son, as a Harry Kane owner for 2 weeks.
Son scored, but just at 10, it's hard. You can't, with the way Tottenham are playing, and they just don't really seem settled under Nuno. It's hard to justify paying 10 for Son, no matter what their fixtures are. So, Son's definitely off my radar for quite a while, I think.
Yeah, I think the defense as well, it looked like good options at the start. I think that's going to go now because Nuno's going to be pressured to play more attacking football, I think, after the results. And with that, there's obviously extra goals likely to be conceded. I wouldn't go near them anyway, but I think they've got that added extra factor now where Nuno's going to have to deviate away from his defensive football, I think, to last as Spurs manager, personally.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out there. And Chelsea, I mean, we've talked about the defenders a lot. What about midfielders? Is kind of a bit of a grey area, isn't it? It's a bit of a no-go zone with the rotation that happens there. But I think there is scope, like for people who are on wildcard, or if you've got a transfer to make. I think going for like a Havertz or something could be massive potential there. It's just it's a punt, isn't it? It's a big risk. I'm not sure I'd go for any of the midfielders for that reason. But with the run they've got, like someone in their midfield is going to perform. Because if we're backing Lukaku to score a lot of goals in this run, and it's been well documented that his assist threat, like his expected assists, his creativity is decent now since he's come back from Juve, not Juve, Inter. There is going to be one of the midfielders that is going to do well. It's just hard to know which one, and it could change each week.
Is that an argument though to go for like two Chelsea players in your wildcard, so Lukaku in defence, because then you can kind of jump on a midfielder then if they strike. Obviously Mount's at 7.3 now, which is a great price. So maybe that is an argument to go with two Chelsea players and then kind of jump on the best third option, because not many people are going to leave themselves the flexibility to do that, are they?
Yeah, that's true. I think that's something also to think about with City. Don't lock yourself out of getting one of the attacking options at City. But yeah, I hadn't thought about that with Chelsea. That's a good point. Because Mount has shown he can take over quite consistently. I think he had a bit of a knock in one of the games where he came off at half time. So once he's fully fit again, he might end up being a consistent star in the Premier League like he was last season. So that is something to bear in mind. And then obviously Lukaku's just, there's not really much to say. He's a great option, probably the best striker. If you were to rank them, he's probably, him and Antonio, quite close as the best ones to have at the moment.
Yeah, I think anyone who's playing the wildcard or not, it's probably them two and one other, isn't it? Or an extra midfielder if you're going 3-5-2. Yeah, definitely go along with that. I
think the fact that his assist potential is higher than Ronaldo's means that his potential to haul is higher in these games. Like Ronaldo could get a goal and not really get bonus points potentially, whereas Lukaku, if he gets like one goal and an assist, he's going to end up with full bonus and an amazing haul. So I think I do prefer, we'll touch on it later, but I think in some of these tricky game weeks where people are deciding between Lukaku and Ronaldo, I do prefer Lukaku, I think.
For sure. And, after that defeat against City as well, that there's going to be less rotation, I think, with Tuchel, just because he's not going to want another slip up. So obviously Lukaku's nailed anyway, but I just think that's an extra added incentive for Tuchel to go with his best team, just because there's such a drop off to the next striker in Werner.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to Mindy now, who's playing his wildcard. Just got a couple of, one actually. Obviously, we've covered off the defence. We're going to talk about Ronaldo v Lukaku in the premium planning section, but this is probably another area of teams that are going to look a bit different in a way, just because the midfielders now between 5.5 and 7. There is a lot of option about. It's when you go from 7 up until Salah where it kind of gets a bit more sparse, but between that 5.5 and 7 now, there's a lot of attractive options. So I big man backer, as everyone knows on Twitter, he's kind of summarized it in a nice way. So he's done shots in the box, Sarr, Saka, Gallagher, XG, Sarr again, Gallagher again, Townsend. I don't know if that's helped by his penalty at the weekend. And then chances created, Rafinha, Townsend again, Saka. So it's kind of similar names. And then XA is Ben Rama, Gallagher and Rafinha. So the names that kind of stand out are Gallagher, Rafinha, Saka, and then Townsend, aren't they?
Yeah, I think Townsend's XG will definitely be helped a lot massively by that penalty the weekend.
Yeah.
And you'd think when Calvert-Lewin comes back, he won't be on penalties anymore. So
yeah,
I wouldn't really factor Townsend into the thinking that much. But yes, Sarr's a tricky one now as well because he's only got one good fixture left, hasn't he?
Yeah, and then it's Liverpool next year.
So although he did do really well against Liverpool last season. I just think Watford don't look to be creating loads in open play still. So I think when the good fixtures end, if you're on wildcard, I probably wouldn't pick Sarr. I'd look at Saka, Gallagher over Sarr, and Rafinha as well. To look at those, I think Sarr's probably moving down the pecking order. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll go along with that. And Gallagher was the first 90 minutes I saw of Palace this season. I hadn't seen before that because I kind of wanted to get an eye on him because obviously he's performing all these great stats. And I thought he was brilliant. He's on pretty much every set piece. He just looks really lively. Allardyce did a good job at West Brom to kind of hide how good he was because before that I thought he was just like a tackler because he always seemed to get booked. So he never really showed off his like creative output, but he seems to just be like in the number 10 role for Palace. He has all the creative freedom, which was a bit of a surprise to me seeing him play at West Brom. But he looks as good as the stats are, I'd say, going off that game. And
yeah, the way he drives with the ball and just runs into the box a lot. Did he actually have all this? Because Milivojevic was back in the game on Monday, and I saw he took a couple of. He definitely took a couple of free kicks and stuff. I wonder whether.
Gallagher definitely took the corners. You're probably right about the free kicks. Yeah, that might hinder it a bit.
So, but at that price, 5.7, great option to have. You were talking about Smith Rowe as a fifth mid. You could maybe, I'm not sure what the rotation's like, but you could maybe look at having those two as your fourth and fifth and pick the best one to play each week, something like that, given how kindly they're priced. And on Rafinha, what's your verdict on the fact that he seems to be only fit enough to play 60, 65 minutes at the moment?
It's a tricky one. I kind of took him out for Sarr for that reason because I didn't want him to not play, and then I thought Sarr was a good option for the next two. But then I watched the highlights of that Leeds game against West Ham, and he could have got 2 or 3 at the post. He's just a brilliant footballer, isn't he? And the only thing that goes against him is he's called up to the Brazil team, isn't he? So he doesn't have any time to recover. I think if he was fit this weekend and Bielsa confirmed it and he wasn't traveling away with Brazil, I think it was a no-brainer get him in. But it's going to be tricky to see how they kind of manage that situation over in Brazil because he's going to get no time to recover that hip, is he?
Yeah, it does make it a little bit annoying. I think it ties into everything we've been saying though about the bench. If you are wildcarding this week,
maybe Smith Rowe Gallup. That's the way to do it. Yeah,
because then you can play one of them in the week after the internationals. Because then you don't have to worry about whatever happens with Rafinha over the international break, and then if he does somehow break down and the injury gets worse, you've got someone to come in straight away without having to worry about making a transfer. But I think what you've just described about how good he looks, even in 60, 65 minutes, he could get double digits in one half the way he's playing, and Leeds fixtures are good enough for him to do that. I wonder with if Bamford comes back, that if he's back soon, that helps his potential as well. I think. How did it look with him combining with Rodrigo?
Yeah, they look good. To be fair, they patterned up quite well. Whether Bamford will be better at leading the line and kind of playing it off to him, probably time will tell. But I thought it looked good with Rodrigo. Like I say, I thought Rafinha, other than Antonio, them two were the best players on the pitch from what I've seen.
So you could be doing Saar back to Rafinha in a couple of weeks.
Well, with the Trent news, I've obviously made the show to Rudiger. I'm actually debating doing Trent to Cancelo and Sissoko or Bissouma up to Rafinha and do a -8 and then kind of roll my transfer next week. And then kind of, it's something I'll probably weigh up depending on Trent's injury. But I just think having Rafinha for the next couple, as well as Cancelo with the Burnley game in mind the week after, is something that I'm weighing up whether I do it or not. I never normally like to take a hit like that, but I think two kind of justifiable, especially if we get an update over Trent's condition.
I think as much as I'd like you to ruin your team, etc., I think like taking a hit for a player who's carrying an injury feels.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. But I can just see that Watford game, like Watford aren't great defensively. Newcastle could have scored 5 or 6, I think, last weekend. So when you do a risky hit like that, obviously you got to weigh it up, and might not do it yet, but I do think there's a big Rafinha haul coming. Like I say, it's just that injury makes it difficult, and obviously the Brazil situation.
Cool.
We'll move on to Mr. Mindy himself, who is playing his wild card, and he does have Cancelo in there. No Trent in there as well, but he does have a seat there 1.5. So the plan is obviously to get Trent in, I suppose.
Yeah, so this is under the working assumption that Trent's out for 3 weeks. So yeah, I've gone double Chelsea, double City defense, and then the plan would be to have Alonso there as my placeholder for Trent. So I've left that at 1.5. I think I might need to have another look at that just to make sure I have left enough money.
You'd be 0.3 short at the moment, but
right.
I think Trent will go down this weekend, so you would be probably 0.2.
Yeah, so I might need to make some slight tweaks just to make sure I do have an easy way to get Trent back. But that's definitely what I'm leaning to currently. So I've got Ramsdale and Sanchez as my goalkeepers. I was saying earlier that the risk of Leno to Ramsdale does put me off just having 4.5 and 4.0. And I don't think if you're on Wildcard, you want to be setting yourself up for a fall like that. I think it's just, it feels like you might be making a transfer waiting to happen. So yeah, but then if I want to make sure I've got enough money to get Trent back, that might be where I have to make the sacrifice. So we'll see. I do think that, as we said, Ramsdale's a great option with the Arsenal fixtures, and with the amount of good defensive options there are, having him as the way into the Arsenal defence over, say, Ben White does definitely appeal. And then to run through the defenders, so Alonso, we've talked about loads over the past couple of weeks. Just Chilwell could come in soon. There's going to be a lot of people looking at the Champions League lineup tonight.
It's interesting.
Interesting. Oh, actually, would that be out now? Actually, while I'm going through, do you want to just quickly check Chelsea's lineup? So yeah, I've got Alonso for the attacking threat, Rudiger for the nailed-on 90 minutes most weeks. Chelsea's great fixtures. He's kind of an easy option to pick. And then, given how amazing City look and the fixtures they're going to have after this week, I'm planning ahead for their good run with having Diaz and Cancelo both there. While Cancelo's looking amazing, I can see him starting most. I think he'll be a similar sort of role to Rudiger, where it might be like he'll play 7 out of every 8, something like that. And Diaz is just, like we saw last season, he's just nailed on 90 minutes every week in the Premier League, can get his head on it from corners and set pieces. And now that De Bruyne is back, whipping the balls in, I'm sure we'll see the City central defenders. I think Laporte's already had a couple, hasn't he? So,
Ake scored as well.
So yeah, that can only be improved with De Bruyne back in contention. And then in the midfield is probably the hardest area to pick. So a lot of this could change. So yeah, this isn't like a wildcard reveal. It's definitely there's definitely I'd be amazed if this ends up being the team I go with. There's so much still to learn from the press conferences. But Grealish, I think his stats aren't great, but just the fact that he's playing so regularly, and then the fixtures that you're going to have, I think he is the best option from the City midfield. What are your thoughts on that as a City fan?
Yeah, the weird thing is, like the stats, chances created and stuff, he is quite high up there, isn't he, in all the chats? But actually watching the 90 minutes, he doesn't look like he's going to score or assist too many. But I was saying to my brother a few days ago, actually, I think all it takes is once he gets a few goals and kind of gets in the positions to score, I think he'll just set the world alight. And FPL, I still think at some point in the season everyone's going to have him. It's just a question of when. I think at 8 million, because obviously that was priced up before his move, wasn't it? That was his Aston Villa price. I don't think he would have been 8 million if he was at City.
Yeah, so I think with my current thinking, I'm thinking of I might just take that gamble and think that this next run of fixtures after the Liverpool game will be where he does have that run where he outperforms his price and everyone wants him. And yeah, Salah's not going anywhere. I did toy with the idea of maybe going for Mane over Salah because I'm going to be captaining Lukaku so much. But yeah, I don't think I am going to. I'm not going to take that risk.
I thought you were going to say De Bruyne then. Obviously, you got
no, not De Bruyne. Then yeah, we talked a lot about Arsenal emerging as great budget options. So Smith Rowe at 5.3, such a good price. Even if he does miss the odd game here or there, I think the way my team's set up with Livramento and Gallagher there as well, I'll have two solid bench options every week, hopefully. So the way I've set this up is for, if Alonso or Cancelo don't start, I've got, Gallagher or Shaw or Livramento, Gallagher or Smith Rowe or Livramento to come off the bench for them. I might rethink that, but I do think that the way it's come about with all these great budget midfielder options, it does sort of lend itself to that. And the formation I'd play with this would be 4-4-2 most weeks, but it could also be a 3-5-2. So I could sort of switch between depending on injuries or whatever form, etc. So the fifth midfield spot is Rafinha. We just spoke quite a lot about him, but yeah, his consistent threat, nailed on when he's fit. It's just that doubt over his fitness and the Brazil stuff is annoying. I'm just thinking about it now. Like there's a few players here where Alonso could feasibly end up out of the team. Cancelo might randomly have a game. I could have a week where, say, Alonso doesn't start. Zinchenko comes in for Cancelo. Rafinha needs a week off, and Smith Rowe gets rested. So maybe I don't know. Do you think that maybe there are too many risks?
No, I think if you are doing that, I think you've done it right with having two bench. I think I would be reluctant to do that and have. I think Livramento's fixtures now. If Livramento had real tough run of fixtures, then maybe you only have one bench option. But I think he's a feasible playing option with the fixtures that come. So I think you'd be very unlucky to have more than two of these not playing in a week. Obviously, it's happened in the past few weeks with all the injuries, but I think if you set on Alonso Cancelo, I think two playing subs is the way to go at least. Yeah,
and Alonso would eventually go back to Trent. That's the current thinking. So yeah, that's the plan there with the defenders and midfielders.
The only thing I'll have to say here, obviously, when you talk about your strikers, is just how you would get to another option if it emerges, like Tony or Jimenez, if Jimenez continues to score. If you do want to move money to your strike force.
Yeah, that is probably the area where I'm least flexible in the team. And Tony is someone who I think people will be getting soon. The way that Brentford are playing, they just looked like no matter who they play, they seem to be able to create chances and cause teams problems. So yeah, Tony and his mate as well. Is it Bomo?
Yeah.
I've heard so many different pronunciations of that name this week, and I've lost as to what the correct one is.
He's only 5.5 in it, so he's an easy one. Just swap Gallagher or Smith Rowe. But yeah, I think it's the striker that you were struggling.
Yeah. The games I've seen of Brentford, it kind of looks to be more that Tony sort of drops a bit deeper and sort of gets involved in the build-up, and Bowman was more in the box. I wonder if he might. It'd be interesting to see which one emerges as like the better option, because the price difference. Like Tony is the better option; he's on pens as well. Yeah. But it's that price difference thing. It's like what we were saying between Smith Rowe and Saka. You've got to factor that in. And like Mark from Black Box, I think he's had Mboma since like game week 3, ahead of the curve as normal. But so yeah, there are top managers who've gone for Mboma for that reason. So yeah, it's interesting. That might be an easy way for me to get that 0.2 I need to do the easy swap for Alonso to Trent, maybe swap in Mboma for Gallagher. But yeah, something to think about as we get closer to the deadline. But yeah, the strikers, there's not really much to say. They're locked in. Antonio, Lukaku.
Just a question if you get another one, isn't it? Yeah,
but yeah, you can't. It's hard to set up a team that's like ready for everything. I think I'm flexible through defence and midfield. And if West Ham start, having a bit of a downturn, or Antonio's never goes through a whole season being fit, so if whenever he might pick up an injury, and then I go from Antonio to Eve Antonio or Jimenez maybe. So there is that option. It's just hard to see dropping Antonio at the minute, but an injury could force your hand.
Yep, no, good team. We'll move on to Snog, Marry, Avoid, which is going to be Mindy this week. I think it's going to be taken up by premiums, isn't it?
Yeah, mostly premiums. So Snog, Marry, Avoid is, if you've not seen it, let's do this before. This is our stupid or fun, however you want to look at it, version of buy, hold, sell. So Rom's back as my Snog. He was my Snog quite early in the season, but that was before Ronaldo was on the scene, and I ended up transferring Lukaku out for Ronaldo, while Ronaldo had better fixtures. But it's time to go back to Big Rom for this run. We've been talking about this run of fixtures for so long, and yeah, now that I'm on Wildcard, I'm going to go all in with free Chelsea, and Big Rom's going to be my captain. So it was an easy choice for the person I'm going to be locking lips with this week.
Yeah, you've been really inventive with your choices this week, so good to see you put a lot of thought into it.
Well, in terms of who I was going to marry, there wasn't anyone else who I was thinking in my team is really a lock in my current team, because Bruno.
Fair enough.
Bruno needs to go. My defense is a bit messed up, as is everyone's, because of the injuries. And the other option would have been Antonio, but I think we both married. I think Antonio's a bit sick of coming down the aisle with us too. He might get an injury. He might tear his hamstring just from walking down the aisle too many times. So I wanted to protect his hamstrings here. Whereas I think
you won't have anything else to do on his off days other than keep walking down the aisle.
So yeah, Salah here, kind of by default, because there wasn't a load of players I'm wedded to, which is kind of why I'm wildcarding this week. And then move on to my avoid. Oh, I wasn't expecting to see Ronaldo there. I think in my latest running order thing, I'd put Shaw, but yeah, we'll pretend we'll just go with Ronaldo. I am getting rid of him on my wild card, so it holds.
That's why I made the joke about the premiums, the threemium, as people call it.
I should have done my homework and gone through the slides a bit more before we started. But yeah, Ronaldo. for a lot of people on Wildcard, I think they will be making that switch to Lukaku. I do think that if you're not on Wildcard, he's still a good option to hold for the next two, because the fixtures that United have, Everton and Leicester, Everton's expected goals conceded is quite good, but they've not played any good.
They've had a great start, haven't they, in terms of fixtures.
So yeah, I can see Ronaldo scoring in these next two games. He obviously can score in any game, but the fixtures are good enough to keep him. But on my wild card, I am getting rid of him. But just to mention, my avoid that I wanted to have here was Shaw. I think he's the player in my team I'm most wanting to get rid of on the wild card, for the reason of Maguire being out, just the injury. Tellers is back. I can see maybe now Ollie trying to manage his minutes a bit more to stop these injuries coming back into his game. So yeah, I think the appeal of Shaw has diminished, especially in relation to the emergence of the Chelsea and the City boys.
No, fair enough. So we'll wrap up as always with the premium planning segment. So obviously this one's going to link to captaincy over this week and also next couple of game weeks in particular. We obviously United got Everton, Leicester, and Chelsea this swing before it becomes a bit easier. Well, depending if Ronaldo gets a couple of hat-tricks, then maybe not. But it gets a bit easier, obviously, when United's fixtures turn with Liverpool and then followed by tricky. I think they got City, Tottenham in that run. So this is just comparing their stats, isn't it, from game week 1 to 6? Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah. So for the podcast listeners, it's just side-by-side comparison of like goals, shots in the box. I think an easy way to sort of summarize this potentially is the fact that Ronaldo's XG is better than Lukaku's, but Lukaku's XA is better than Ronaldo's, which ties in with how Chelsea use Lukaku and the way his game's changed, and the fact that Ronaldo spends most of his time around the box waiting for players to deliver to him. So I do like that combination of goal and assist threat from Lukaku. It's kind of what I was referring to before. It gives him a bit more potential to haul in most games. The fact that he can get a goal and an assist, and the fixtures are kinder over the next 6 than Ronaldo. So I'm going to be captaining Lukaku this week. For people who've got the freemium Ronaldo and they've got Ronaldo and Lukaku to pick from, what would you be recommending?
Yeah, I've got the freemium, haven't I?
Oh, yeah.
I think Salah could probably rule out, obviously, against City. So it is going to come down to these two, isn't it, this weekend? Ronaldo v Lukaku. I'm pretty torn because I can kind of see the merits to both. And I do think that Everton fixture without their best players in Richarlison, Calvert-Lewin, I don't think they're going to put up the game that Villa did and take it to him. I could be wrong, but I think they might sit back, which might suit Ronaldo a bit more in terms of how United are playing with Ronaldo. So I don't think it's as clear cut as everyone said. And obviously Southampton didn't look too good against Wolves. They conceded 1 goal, but they looked great against City. And whether they can take that game plan to Chelsea and stifle them in the same way will be interesting. Interestingly, Southampton, I think it was Jack Stevens who came off against City, played really well, and Salas who came on. And I think he got given the runaround by Jimenez a bit. So maybe that kind of factors into it as well. But I do think it's a 50-50 decision for me this weekend. I think I'm going to wait to see how United and Chelsea both look tonight and kind of see how the week develops, see what other teams are doing maybe. But I do think that for that fixture alone, Southampton and Everton, there's not too much to split them, to be honest.
Yeah, I think if I had both, I'd go Lukaku, but
still,
it's subjective decision. It's mainly just because of what I was saying before about Chelsea just looking a bit more organised. They're just a better the way they play football as a team is just better than United at the moment.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll talk about captaincy, mate, over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, this week's the big decision, Ronaldo v Rome. I can't see many people going for anyone else other than that. Vardy, maybe, if you got obviously Palace, but Palace look great and not many people do have Vardy, so maybe not. Then the game after that, Liverpool play Watford, don't they? City, Burnley. So if you're ballsy enough to captain Grealish, if you've got him, might not be a bad shout. And then obviously Chelsea, Brentford, who look good. So it's probably Salah v Lukaku, isn't it? The next one.
So yeah, just looking at this though, like Chelsea's fixtures: Southampton, Brentford, Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley. You could conceivably just log out of FPL and leave the captain on Lukaku for 5 weeks.
Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, like the fact that Liverpool have got in the next 5 Watford and Brighton in there, like Salah is always a good option. Would you in the next game week, would you have Ronaldo as a captaincy option then against Leicester, or would you go?
Probably wait and see, isn't it? If he blanks again against Everton, that probably makes the decision a lot easier. Like I say, I'm definitely going to keep Ronaldo for the next 2 unless there's any horrifying injuries. But I think it'll probably come down to how Leicester look again this weekend, because Leicester have looked pretty bad defensively, haven't they? And obviously they got Palace this weekend, which is no easy fixture now going off this season's form. So probably will go down to that. But like I said, the Lukaku factor will probably sway it against Brentford.
I can't remember if you said before, by the way, that did you say that Alonso's starting?
The team wasn't out yet, but it will be.
Oh right, yeah, he is starting.
Right.
So, you know, if
does that make it better or worse?
Well, you could look at it both ways. Like, because Chelsea, it is an important game. So if Chilwell had come in, you could maybe say, oh well, he's not the first choice. He's not nailed on first choice as much as we thought. But then you could look at it the other way, where he might need a bit of a rest at the weekend, and Chilwell might get minutes. But if Chilwell doesn't get any minutes tonight, he wouldn't be ready to start at the weekend, would he? With the amount of game time he's had.
No, and Alonso doesn't get called up to Spain either, so he might be able to afford just playing in both them games and kind of reassess after that. There's not a question of burnout before the Spain fixtures, so you can add in that as well. So I probably would be confident that he plays at the weekend. You just never 100%, are you? That it's always in the back of your mind whether he's going to play or not. But if he's playing, other than Trent, he's best defender in the game, isn't he?
Yeah. But I think that brings us to the end of everything this week. If you've enjoyed it, taken something on board, please like the stream and subscribe if you're new. And yeah, just to plug the socials again, it's premium_FPL on Twitter and Instagram. So come join us. We'll tweet out. I'll try and tweet out my final wildcard team ahead of the deadline. So check out the socials to see what I end up going with. Anything to add before we finish?
No. Good luck to you, sir, with the wildcard, and yeah, good luck to everyone else who's playing the wildcard or with their transfers this week. I think it might be quite critical with what everyone does.
Yeah, let's hope we're not both crying at the start of next week's podcast like we were today. All right. See you next week.